there are tons of guys, the Mel Kipers, the Schefters, the everybody of the world that cover the NFL draft, that talk about this thing. I mean, you go on Twitter, social media, tons of people that talk about prospects and stuff like that. But like I told you, the reason I wanted to get you on is you go look at your social media and the way that you cover it. I'm curious, like, what got you into this? Because I love sports. I love football. I don't love it enough to go watch. Like, there was a D3 offensive lineman that got drafted. I'm like, who is this guy? Like, I don't love it enough to go watch that guy's film, right? Like, what got you into it? What got you interested? Obviously, you love the game of football, but kind of where did it start for you where you're like, you know what? I want to be an NFL draft guy. I want to be a guy that watches film and that breaks down prospects. Basically, for a living, I feel like that's probably what you do, eat, breathe, sleep 24/7.
So basically, I fell in love with the NFL draft probably 2006, 2007 as a kid. And then from there, I started playing football. Wasn't the greatest athlete, so I had to kind of make up for that by just understanding the game. And then from there, I don't know. Mike Mayock, who's now the Raiders GM, used to be on NFL Network as their draft analyst, and he was someone I looked up to, and I'd watch everything he did. And then I don't know, probably films become so much more accessible to people like me who aren't truly in the scouting community. And it's kind of developed as a community itself on draft Twitter, which can be toxic at times.
Draft Twitter. There's a Twitter for everything in there. I mean, it's just like crazy.
Yes. And from there, I don't know. I love kind of tweeting out clips, and then you'll see some of the bigger people will throw my clips in their articles, and it's just like a helping hand to show people who are reading these articles what exactly is going on with these prospects. And I don't know. I just really love football. I don't tend to get too much into other sports outside of me being from Canada, the Raptors, but so I pretty much put all my free time into watching tape. I'm telling you, there's nothing better than having a cup of coffee, having some random lineman from who knows where's tape on, and then kind of figuring out, hey, this guy can play and he might do something. And next thing you know, Quinn Miners, who went in the third round of the Broncos on Friday night, he was a guy who I found his tape over the summer.
That's the D3 guy, right?
Yeah.
Had the ridiculous workout film of like taking down trees and shit. Like, it was insane.
I ended up having him on our podcast last summer. And then obviously Wisconsin Whitewater didn't have a season because of COVID, but he ends up at the Senior Bowl only because Landon Dickerson got hurt. So he was a replacement. He ends up killing it at the Senior Bowl, ends up becoming a third round pick, and everybody loves this guy. And I don't know, it's just kind of a cool feeling to know I was kind of in there maybe a little earlier than some people. And great kid too. So, yeah.
This is kind of random off the wall, Rob, but I'll ask you, like, when you watch the NFL draft, I know a lot of us are like, we watch the draft and, it's interesting. You look in the NFL, like, not everybody went to an SEC school. We love to think that and believe that. And obviously the SEC dominates the draft every single year. But, like, you see this kid at a D3 school, or you see the guy from Northern Iowa or schools you've never even heard of. Like, I know recruiting and development is different for everybody, but how do prospects like that are NFL caliber players, how do they fall to these schools? Like, how? I mean, again, I know there's a lot of development that goes from young man 18 to 22 that, through college, but, like, can you explain, like, because it just, you would think, like, I think the common fan that's not as in-depth and as in tune with it as you are or many others would say, why did we not recruit this guy? Like, oh my God, like Josh Norman goes to Coastal. Why the hell didn't South Carolina sign him? Like, can you explain, like, is it just there's that much development in college, or does it come back to there's that much more projectability at the next level versus, like, maybe he's not a great college player, but he has the build and the projectability to be a really good NFL player?
So there's a couple of factors with that. One of them is honestly accessibility, and it's gotten better now. But if you're a offensive lineman playing like quad A football in the middle of Nebraska, maybe the right people aren't seeing you. Like, maybe Nebraska Omaha is seeing you, and you're Danny Woodhead, and you end up playing D3 football because you're not quite big enough. And a lot with recruiting, they look at a kid and they look at his body. A lot of the time they look at your wrist, they'll look at your neck to see how much of more you could grow into your frame. And if you look kind of maxed out and maybe you're 5'10", 160, and you play receiver and you run a 4.8, and maybe you end up going to, I don't know, South Dakota State, and you become Cade Johnson, who just signed undrafted with the Seahawks, one of the biggest steals of the undrafted market. But because you don't run fast enough, you're not big enough, like SEC schools aren't going to waste their time looking at tiny high schools where maybe the school's not that good and the kids aren't that fast. Like for example, like South Carolina is going to stay in the South. They're going to recruit the South. They're going to recruit the big high schools in the South. I mean, they're going to, especially high school coach connections is huge.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a kid who maybe he's dominating this lower level of high school football, but his coach doesn't know anyone, they're not that good, no one's going to really want to spend the recruiting money and those hours on that kid. But let's say he ends up kind of hitting like Trey Lance, for example, goes third overall. He's from Minnesota. He played high school football and dominated high school football, but it's in Minnesota. Minnesota wanted to recruit him as a safety because they look at him and they don't think he's got like it isn't accurate enough. So he ends up in North Dakota State, ends up in a great program at the FCS level where they can develop him. And they have a history of putting quarterbacks into the NFL and just kind of everything clicking. There's just so much going into it, right? Like, there's a million high school football players in America. So it's just so hard to hit on everyone and find, like, think about how many 5-stars don't actually end up becoming first round picks too, right?
Yeah.
Just so much goes into it. It's just, it's an impossible science. And it's the same thing once they're drafted. Even think about how many busts there are. Like a guy could have it everything and go 10th overall and be out of the league in 3 years or whatever, just because not everything clicks and not everybody has, like, so much of it is mental. Not everybody has maybe the love to put every waking second into the game.
Some people love the game and others love what the game can do for them.
Exactly. That's the perfect way to say it.
Yeah. No, for sure.